Okay, here we go. Jeopardy for period 3. I would advise you to watch this video with your resources on Sunday night, maybe even a little bit on Monday morning. All right, here we go. Here's how it's going to work. Once you know one of these two questions, the point value tells you how many questions, or both. Simply raise your hand, and when I have a lot of people raising their hands, I can know that I can move on to the next one. During which stage of the demographic transition does a population experience a rapid increase in growth? What is the third most populous country in the world behind China and India? Extra credit. What is the approximate population of this country now? Hint, hint, wink, wink. You probably should know that. All right. So again, hand up when you know at least one of these answers. And when I have a number of people that have their hand up, we will show you the answers. Even if you haven't done any of the study guide yet and you haven't started to prepare, you guys, I know that you have busy weeks. It's still the middle of the week. At least spend some time trying to look these answers up or find these questions on your study guide so you can maybe get some of that done, because every minute you spend studying or preparing now is a minute you won't have to spend studying on Sunday night. All right, so again, hand up when you know at least one of the answers. And if nobody raises their hand, I'm going to assume it's that you just don't want to raise your hand, because I know that you guys know at least one of those answers up there. You should know one of those answers up there. But I can't give everybody time to look them all up, because then we're not going to get through all the questions. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're okay. I'm only 5 minutes behind. Okay, a few people know some of the answers. Good. I'll drag this down here so you can see them all. Okay. All right, about 10 seconds, and then I'll show you guys the answers. Again, try to find these on your study guide. The question will be worded similarly, not identically, but similarly. And then when I show you the answer, you can get some of your study guide done, which is a form of studying. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, it's stage 2. That's where the death rate decreases. That's the demographic transition. We are the third most populous country in the world, and I think we're closer to 350 million right now, but as long as you know approximately what our population is, you should be good. Okay, next one, 3 questions. If a country has a growth rate of 4.5%, what's its doubling time? You guys know how to do that. If a population of 1.5 million has 3,200 births, 2,000 immigrants, 1,500 deaths, and 1,000 immigrants, what is its annual percentage growth rate? Show your work. Okay. True or false? The following series of numbers shows exponential growth: 14, 28, 56, 112, 224. And again, when you know at least 2 of the answers to that question, raise your hand. All right. All right, got a couple people joining the party. About 5 or 6 of you guys are there. Okay, about 15 more seconds. All right, here we go. All right, about 6 of you guys are on it. Here we go. All right, so the correct answer is, this is not exponential. So like if you had 2 and then it went to 4 and then it went to 16 and then it went to 16 times 16, I think is 256. I have no idea what 256 times 256 is. That would be exponential growth. Here is the solution for the rule of 70, 15.5 years, and you get a 0.18% annual growth rate. Okay? All right, here we go. 5 questions. Improved medical care and sanitation are directly responsible for the blank of the human population over the past 100 years. That sounds very, very familiar. If an average human needs about 2,000 calories per day to survive, which they do, how many total calories does the world need? Sketch an age structure diagram for a rapid population growth. Sketch one for slow population growth, but still growth. And what type of survivorship curve, 1, 2, or 3, is particularly vulnerable to changes in the environment, meaning it would represent a species that would not be able to adapt quickly enough to a changing environment and, of course, could become threatened and or extinct in a relatively short period of time. And these organisms typically produce few offspring and put a lot of energy into raising that offspring. Okay. All right. So again, once you know about 3 of these questions, or you think you know about 3 of these questions, put your hand up and I'll know that we're okay to go ahead. So today is basically to give you guys a little bit of confidence, because if you know the answers to some of these questions, these are a lot harder than the test. The test, you will see the correct answer. You just have to recognize it. If you can figure out what these answers are without seeing the answer itself, you should feel pretty confident going into the entire weekend that you will have to prepare for this test. On the flip side, if you don't know the answer to very many of these questions, it's not meant to make you confident. It's meant to make you scared, and hopefully that fear causes you to study a good amount this weekend. All right, you guys, about 45 seconds. Remember, please give me some idea of whether or not you're ready for answers by putting your hand up. All right, about 15 seconds. Okay, folks, here we go. Okay, so the population is increasing. All right, that was today's warm-up. We have about 7.8 billion. Multiplied by 2,000 calories means somewhere in between 15 and 16 trillion calories are necessary per day. Rapid growth, remember, is going to have a wide base at the bottom. Slow growth, you're going to have a narrow base at the bottom. And still kind of bulged here in the middle. This would be like the United States, developed nations. And a type 1 survivorship curve has few offspring, and they put a lot of energy into raising those offspring. And of course, if the environment changes and they can't adapt and your 2 cubs die, that species is in trouble. Whereas if you produce thousands of offspring and put almost no energy into raising them, you're going to have to assume that a decent amount of those organisms will survive and be able to keep the population going. All right, here we go. On to ecosystems. In a closed system with constant mass, energy is not created nor destroyed, only changed. What does that describe? Blank can be solar energy converted to chemical energy derived from living or recently living things, or energy available for trophic levels. Again, hand up if you think you know at least one of those. And I'll just give you this hint. You have both of these answers somewhere. Like literally, question, answer. You have these somewhere. Hint, hint, wink, wink. All right, about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. These are both warm-up questions. Okay, first law of thermodynamics. That's what's described here. And biomass can be solar energy converted to chemical energy, derived from living or recently living things, and energy available for trophic levels. All right. Draw a 4 trophic level food chain that could be found in a tundra ecosystem. Okay, so you don't have to draw it, but know the types of organisms that are going to be in it. List 3 things that a generalist omnivore might eat in an ecosystem. So a generalist is something that eats a variety of different types of foods, and an omnivore means they eat both plants and animals. And the second law of thermodynamics explains that blank of energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next. I'll give you guys a clue. This is a number with a unit. Again, give me a hand up if you know at least 2 of these answers. All right, folks, about 20 seconds left before I show you the answers. All right, here we go. Okay, so there's various answers. So let's see. In a tundra, you're probably going to have lynx. You're probably going to have an Arctic fox. You might have some grass. Okay, that's peeking out of the snow or the ice. You guys kind of get the idea. Maybe some apex predators. You might even have like an eagle. Okay. So an generalist that's an omnivore will eat plants, insects, animals, etc. Probably going to be an environment where the food sources are kind of unpredictable. And of course, 10% gets transferred from one trophic level to the next, and the other 90% is lost as metabolic heat. And that is the second law of thermodynamics that explains that. Okay, here we go. If a blank were to fill up with organic and inorganic matter, okay, stuff, it would likely turn into a meadow through early succession. You guys are like, what? Oh, do your best. An organism that only eats plants is called what? A species that is important and essential to numerous other species is an example of a blank blank. So, like if you remove this species from the ecosystem, it might be in trouble. In an area, herbivores eat plants. They are eaten by predators. Remains are eaten by scavengers. The presence of all these organisms in all these populations describes which ecological term? So, as soon as you think you know 2 or 3 of these questions, throw your hand up in the air and wave it like you just don't care. Sorry, it was there. I had to take it. For those of you that are curious about when the carrying capacity lab is going to be graded, I think I'm going to start working on that tonight. Kind of depends on the debate. If the debate happens, I'm not going to get to grade as much. If the debate doesn't happen, I'm going to have a lot of extra time. Personally, I don't think the debate should happen. I think it's going to be a joke, but we'll see. All right, about 10 seconds. All right, here we go. Okay, so a lake. If a lake were to fill in with inorganic stuff, so like dirt, mud, and organic stuff, those things that are in the lake die, might turn into a meadow. Okay, herbivores eat plants. Keystone species, really important species in the ecosystem. And a community is a bunch of different populations of different organisms in the same place at the same time. Okay. All right, on to the BGC, the biogeochemical cycles. What process produces both carbon dioxide and water vapor? True or false? Humans interfere with the water cycle with transpiration, allowing water vapor to enter the atmosphere. True or false? Humans are involved in that process. Hand up if you think you know one or both of these questions. All right, about 20 seconds. This one should be pretty easy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. See? Okay, so cell respiration is what's giving our cells inside of our body energy. In the presence of oxygen, glucose and other food molecules can get broken down to produce adenosine triphosphate, ATP. And the products of that reaction are carbon dioxide, which we exhale. We also exhale water vapor, and that's why in the cold, you'll see your breath because those water molecules are changing from the gas phase to the liquid phase. And of course, if you have glasses and you breathe out onto glasses or any surface, that's evidence of water vapor as well. And humans are not involved in transpiration. Transpiration is evaporation from a plant surface. So we are not involved in transpiration. All right, here we go. Blank rocks are created by heat and pressure. Blank rocks are created by particles being cemented together. Blank rocks are created by melting and cooling. Plate tectonics describes the movement of sections of the Earth's blank sphere. So what's the term for the Earth's crust? Long-term storage of phosphorus and sulfur are found in what form? Where would you find sulfur and phosphorus stored for a long period of time? Hand up if you think you know two or more of these answers. And some of these questions are easier than others. All right, kids, about 30 seconds. Seeing a lot of the same hands up. That means these people are getting prepared. All right, about 10 seconds. All right, here we go. Rock types. Metamorphic rocks come from changing due to heat and pressure. Sedimentary rocks come from particles or sediments. Igneous, ignite. These come from fire or magma and lava melting and cooling. Plate tectonics describes the movement of sections of the Earth's lithosphere, that is the fancy word for the Earth's crust, and long-term storage of phosphorus and sulfur are found in rocks. Phosphorus primarily underground and primarily on the bottom of the ocean in rocks. Sedimentary rocks would contain a great amount of blanks because they are not exposed to great amounts of heat and pressure and or melting. The input of solar energy drives which part of the water or hydrologic cycle? Increased deforestation will lead to an increase in what atmospheric gas? Think of the carbon cycle. Ocean acidification, which is a decrease in ocean's pH, would lead to a decrease in blank because it is more difficult for them to form their exoskeletons. Hand up if you know at least 3 of these answers. Or you think you know at least 3 of these answers. About 30 more seconds. All right, kids, here come the answers. So sedimentary rocks, if we find fossils, typically they're found in sedimentary rocks because usually they don't get exposed to any amounts of heat, pressure, or melting. Obviously, those that do, the fossils get destroyed along with the rocks. And honestly, if there is a fossil that links our ancestors to ancient primates, that fossil might have been destroyed by now. So we may never have the proof of that. It's called the missing link, that fossil that has characteristics of current primates and ancient primates. Input of solar energy, that's evaporation. So carbon dioxide, this is kind of a double whammy. So number one, trees pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So if you cut down a tree, obviously you lose the ability for it to remove carbon dioxide. And in many cases, if they're just clearing land for cattle or clearing land for homes, a lot of times they're going to burn that tree, which is going to add all of the carbon in the tree to the atmosphere, or the carbon dioxide. So it's kind of a double whammy. Corals are being greatly affected by the change in pH of oceans. Matter of fact, in my biology class, we're watching Before the Flood, and one of the startling statistics in that movie is that over the last 20 years, 50% of the coral reefs on the planet are dead. And you may think, well, coral, okay, bummer. But coral reefs are kind of synonymous to tropical rainforests on this planet. They produce habitat for fish and numerous other species. So like villages that are near coral reefs can go out and fish near the coral reef and they can catch fish. But when the coral reef dies, the fish leave. And there are millions and millions of people on this planet that get their protein from fish. So it's not just the coral, it's the fact that these populations of fish and the diversity that they have at these places is being lost because those organisms leave once the coral is dead. Okay, moving on to economics and the environment. The consumption of blank by bats and the control of blank provided by forests in Central America are examples of ecosystem services. True or false? Ecological benefits of wildlife include pollination, matter cycling, pest control, and ecosystem homeostasis. Hand up if you think you know at least one of these answers. About 30 seconds. Okay, about 10 seconds. Okay, here we go. So there are many things that bats consume that are pests to humans, but a big one is mosquitoes, especially in tropical rainforests. They sometimes carry diseases. Flooding. So the tree roots hold the soil together. The vegetation on the surface prevents erosion. So those are both ecosystem services, and all of these things are considered ecological benefits of wildlife. So that is a true statement. All right, here we go. A blank is the land area that delivers recharge into smaller tributary streams that flow into larger rivers. Trenches are formed from which type of plate boundary? Pollination, water purification, nitrogen fixation, and soil formation are all types of blank blank. All right, so once you think you know at least two of these answers, put your hand up. All right, about 10 seconds. Okay, here we go. The term is a watershed. So we live in the American River watershed. If we're talking about Sacramento, it'd be the American River and the Sacramento River watershed. It's basically the entire area where water leads to these tributaries and rivers. A convergent plate boundary. So remember, whenever you have oceanic crust that bumps into continental crust, like off the coast of Northern California, Washington, Oregon, or if you have oceanic crust bumping into oceanic crust like you have over by Japan, one of them is going to get shoved under, and that's called subduction. And what happens is the friction or the contact between these two plates pulls the one that is doing the subducting down a little bit, and that creates a low spot in the Earth's crust, and that is what we call a trench. Trenches are associated with convergent plate boundaries and subduction. Pollination, water purification, et cetera, those are all ecosystem services, things nature does for us for free. And if I remember correctly, I mean, it's in the trillions and trillions of dollars, things that nature does for us. But when we jack up ecosystems and we jack up the climate, fewer and fewer of these things are being done. And we're going to have to start paying money to get some of these things done. All right, here we go. Last one for chapter 7. Which element cycling through ecosystems is mostly controlled by microscopic bacteria? Are you kidding me? That one should be easy. Forests and oceans are referred to as carbon blanks. Increasing the yield of farmland by using more fertilizer, better irrigation, and faster growing crops is referred to as the blank blank. And when approximately did this practice begin? Hand up if you think you know at least 3 of those answers. Okay, about 30 more seconds. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that's the nitrogen. Remember the nitrogen-fixing bacteria that live in the root nodules of legumes, beans, peas, organisms like that? Carbon sinks are carbon reservoirs, oceans, and forests. And now, of course, if you cut down the forest, it's no longer a carbon reservoir. Let's see. The Green Revolution happened in the 60s, and that's where we started using a lot of fertilizer and doing mass production of crops. And of course, that enabled us to feed a growing population. Okay. Come on. Let me see. There we go. Okay. All right. Last chapter, chapter 8, biodiversity. Building a new highway in a forest separates an insect species. Over time, they can no longer interbreed and they evolve into two distinct species. What mechanism is responsible for this speciation? True or false? Extinction of honeybees would be devastating for life on Earth. All right, hand up if you think you know at least one of these answers. Okay, about 10 seconds. All right, here we go. Okay, it's called geographic isolation, and there are lots of geographies that could separate these species. If you have an insect, for example, that can't swim and can't fly, even a small creek could separate these populations. A mountain range, ocean. If we're talking about a prey species, could even be like a habitat fragmentation. You know, I'm not going out there. I saw Billy go out there and a hawk picked him off like that. I'm staying over here. So any geographic feature that separates those species so they can't interbreed, and if they can't interbreed, then they evolve on their own. That's called geographic isolation. And of course, if we lose pollinators and honeybees in particular, we are in a heap of trouble. We get so much pollination for our crops from these pollinators, and climate change and that big, huge hornet that's coming across the United States and killing all the bees. It's making things really tough on them. All right, a couple more questions, guys. The blank blank was accidentally introduced into the Great Lakes and became a very bad invasive species. Blank is the change of genetic composition of a population over many generations. Which geographic region and altitude? Altitude is like, is it on the ground? Is it way up in the atmosphere? On Earth would you likely find the greatest degree of biodiversity? Hand up if you think you know at least two of these questions, the answers to two of these questions. All right, about 30 seconds. All right, folks, here we go. So that was a zebra mussel. Evolution, change in the genetic composition over many generations. Typically, it's hundreds or thousands of generations. And low altitude. So, not necessarily up in the trees, not in the atmosphere. Low altitude near the equator, you can expect to have ecosystems with a lot of biodiversity. That's where we find our rainforests. All right, last one, folks. Blank blank is defined as the number of species and the number of individuals of each species in an area. Which type of selection did the peppered moths undergo during the Industrial Revolution? Hint, the population slowly changed from mostly light colored to mostly dark colored over a period of years. What is the biggest reason for species becoming endangered and extinct due to human actions? I think all three, at least two of these, are warm-up questions. So hand up if you think you know at least two answers. All right, about 20 more seconds. Okay, here we go. Okay, species diversity, directional selection, habitat loss, and fragmentation. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for all the questions. One more time, if you think watching the Jeopardy, if you feel confident, going into, you still got 3 more days to study, put your hand up if you're feeling confident about this test. Don't be shy. I know some of you guys had your hand up a lot, and your answers probably were correct. Okay, maybe more. Okay. Well, obviously, if you thought you knew the answers to many of those, and you did, you have very little work to do over the weekend. For those of you that did not know a lot of the answers, obviously you got a little bit of work to do over the next 3 days. All right, you guys, that is it for today. Email me over the weekend if you have any questions. Again, if you have a 504 plan, please check your email. Have a great weekend. Be safe.